Okay, good morning. This is day 107 of making little videos of day or thought in the life of schizophrenic Dominic. I don't believe I am diseased or crazy, but I experience schizophrenia. It is a reality to be experienced. In day 17 of these videos, I give the reason why I call myself schizophrenic rather than targeted individual. In day 45, I give a little intro into 3-minute intro into why I make these videos in the first place. And it has the rest of the video on that one. I've written a book on medium.com that I share to the topic sections of these posts, and it's called Unveiling the Schizophrenic Tradition. It's about done. It's just kind of like an internet book at this point. It may get published in the future, and it'd be nice to see it in print form, I guess. But it's about 100 and something, 140 pages or something like that on a 140 pages, 170 pages on a Word document or something like that, or some ridiculous something like that. Okay, so I've submitted chapter form on medium.com. All right, so I give little thoughts and I read out of little books and stuff and give some idea about synchronicity and feedback that I get from the public and in general from the government or things like that. And so I was reading in my book on becoming Earth how life happens on many different scales, and you have life occurs on the cellular level, the organism level, the ecosystem level, and then the planetary level. So even planetary, that's what it's saying in the book, and it's trying to say that, or it's just putting forth the idea that Earth is alive and is a living system. It's a living thing, and so it's going through that, and this is in relation to the Sarah Walker book about life as no one knows it. In Becoming Earth, it discusses it's related to this, so you can see that there's kind of like pushing towards this ideations in science and stuff. And so in the Sarah Walker book, she says there's no definition for life agreed upon. And in this book, it also iterates that there's no agreed upon definition of life. So seems like there's kind of uh, mindset going forward in the sciences that is pushing for, some sort of redefinition of life or definitive definition of life. There's people are struggling with those things, where scientists are struggling with trying to figure out what's the definition of life. And for Sarah Walker's book, I know she's talking about like as we go into the universe, life could be really what we constitute as life could be something totally different than what we think about it here. And so, yeah, I guess that'll be interesting going forward as humanity. In David A. Hughes' book, he talks about the parallels shown between COVID-19 and the shock doctrine and a raid at dawn, like a dawn raid of like an FBI raid or something like that. And that it was like taken from manuals for shocking prisoners and stuff like that. And so he was saying that, it was not kind of like that. But if you really look at COVID-19, it's like there was the Rockefeller group, I think, posited in 2011 during the Obama administration that a global virus could result in authoritarian moves by the government. So they kind of predicted it, and they did it. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, that was 2011. And so he doesn't really talk about that yet in here. I don't know if he's going to talk about it, and it's kind of weird that he wouldn't talk about it because he's talking about so much other stuff. And he's trying to say that it was shocking, like no one, it was took everyone by surprise, and I'm not sure that it did. It took probably the average person by surprise, and I guess that's what he's getting into. But government officials and things like that, if you know about the Rockefeller group, then you realize they knew this kind of thing was going to be going on. So, but I guess that makes David A. Hughes' point in the end, anyways. So, all right. When the Earth was green book, it says pick up one species, pick up any species that you can see on Earth or whatever, pick out one species and study that species, and you would be missing a whole ton of stuff about the way life works on Earth. And in that book, it is positing that plants are like almost like alien like. Their perceptibility our perceptibility of what they go through is limited, and uh they operate on a different time frame and things like that, like a plant's life or whatever, or like the way or what it views, like trying to get into like a plant's mind. There's no mind in a plant or whatever, but like uh you know feeling what a plant feels, or like about life, about how a plant feels about life. Like she was saying, like the plant will send its sex cells into the air, like just woof. And so that's kind of interesting. It's a lot different than what we do. And so she was just pointing out, the author was pointing out that like pick out one species and you're not going to find out everything there is to know. They're going to find a limited amount that there is to know about life or whatever on planet Earth, because it's so diverse and there's so much happening. And so that's kind of interesting. And yeah. All right. And I was going to say something. I said something the other day, and I have read David Joe Atwill's book called Caesar's Messiah, and I started his other book called Shakespeare's Messiah. And in Joe Atwill's book Caesar's Messiah, he posits that Flavian dynasty back in the old Roman times created Christianity and then left a kind of convoluted parody in gospels and church rituals and things like that that informed posterity of the fact that Titus Flavius is the real Jesus, and his son, I think, uh, or I don't know all the names, but like the son and the father, and then they're supposed to be Jesus and the Son of God and the Father and Almighty and all that. Anyways, so I thought it was an interesting book, and it's very much like in line with what I had already thought as a kid growing up in Catholic school. And I used to sit in the Catholic mass, and I used to think like, man, I think someone's making fun of us right now. It just seems like really funny the way that the God is talking to people and stuff, and it just seems like almost sarcastic, or like So I thought that was kind of interesting. And anyways, I thought that as a kid, I used to think about Roman gods, and I used to think that the gods were like people, and or like the Greek gods were like people and stuff. And so I was thinking about Joe Atwill posits that Christianity is potentially a anti-Semitic uh, cult of the Romans, because there was a marriage between the Jewish intelligentsia, or like the powerful religious keepers of Judaism, and the Roman families at that time. And so he was saying that this was like a little bit of a subjugation of putting them underneath the Romans. And so they had I think Josephus is the historian, and supposedly he wrote the Gospels and with Titus the Flavians. And anyways, so that's a good book, and I recommend it. If he's not trying to dismiss Christianity as like the teachings or anything like that, or the mythology, but just thinking like it could be human hands that made it. And I I actually agree with one of his sentiments, that there might have been a Jesus that lived at that time that was crucified as a rebel, and they just decided to create a Christian cult out of it. And so, I also think other things like, potentially Jesus was, the time travel or things like that. I think that's all possible. So I go back and forth on it, but I think that there's something to this mathematical improbabilities that Joe Atwill comes up with. Anyways, I was just getting into like the same way that Christianity is a anti-Semitic religion a little bit with the way it creates Jews as the villain in the story with Jesus and stuff like that is the same way that and the way that they write the gospels and all that is the same way that uh, Donald Trump is anti-white and anti-American. It's like it's a very similar thing, and you see this pattern of behavior among powerful people and manipulators. And so I was just gonna say that about Trump, and so yeah. James Comey put out that thing. I don't want to say it, but like he put out that thing that supposedly is a hit on Donald Trump. And I would just say this about James Comey. I think the guy is phony. I think he elevates Trump all the time by victimizing Trump and turning Trump into a victim. And I think it's part of a counterintelligence. I mean, the guy was the head of the FBI. You don't think he could be part of a counterintelligence program, and that Donald Trump could be working with the head of the FBI as part of a counterintelligence program? Then you're a little bit naive. And so I actually think that the Trump assassination attempt was bogus. Telling me that he just turned his head and a bullet went by his ear. I don't believe it. I think it's that he went down to the ground and like he came up bleeding or whatever with the Secret Service and everything, and you tell me that a bullet just was by your ear and you're gonna go like this to the crowd or whatever. Give me a break. And so uh, I think Comey's a phony, and he likes to elevate Trump. He's been doing it for years. He turns him into a victim, and he elevates Trump. And so uh, I don't buy this thing that he put in the sand. And so, in any event, assassinating Donald Trump would result in World War III probably. So I don't think that's a good idea. I'll just say that. Uh, it's Disney's 70th anniversary today, and I was struck by something someone said the other day. There was people criticizing like, why would you go to Disney because it's like soulless and it's exploitative and all this, and it's just college interns being exploited. And I was thinking like, if you think Disney's soulless, I think maybe you have something wrong with your soul because it's just a place that people, especially in today's world, like you look at the world today and just go by like an industrial park or see people sitting on the freeway in traffic or see people starving to death or whatever, I guess that's why they mean it's soulless because like people are spending money at a Disney park rather than feeding impoverished people. So on that respect, it's like it's a priority thing. But you can say that about nearly anything that people do going to a concert or whatever, like it's music soulless because there's poor people in the world. I don't think it's soulless or whatever. So like you know, uh, there's messaging that comes out of Disney that's positive or whatever. So like also it's just like people just it's just a place people go to have fun and experience joy, and it doesn't attract cynical people, I don't think, which makes it kind of nice because everybody there is there to have a good time, and it doesn't attract cynical people who think like Walt Disney was just after a buck and he didn't give a shit about people having a nice time or whatever. I think that it's I think it's about a place where this guy had an idea and he wanted to make people have fun. He thought he could profit off of it, sure, but uh, that's everything. And as far as exploitation goes, this guy was saying like, you why don't you go to organic experiences or something like that? Why spend money at Disney? But organic experiences are going to have some amount of exploitation too. And personally, if I could work at Disney, I would. So I think that if you get to work at Disney, as a job. There's a lot worse jobs that you could have, and it's one of the better jobs. You're lucky to work in an environment like that. I've worked in creative environments around kids and stuff, and it's a joy, and you're lucky to be in those kind of situations. So I know that there is a lot of difficulties with that job, so I don't want to dismiss those. But all right, goodbye.